Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Cynthia Nyaguchi.
And I'm Jesse Ekechuku.
So today I have a guest here with me. He's going to tell us how growing up in his country was like. And then later on, I think he has a lot of Kenyan friends who have shared how growing up in Kenya is. So today, let us take, you know, let us get to understand. Let us get to know who Jesse is. Yes. So yeah, welcome to my video. Make sure you subscribe and comment down below.
Okay, what was growing up for me in Nigeria, or how was my childhood in Nigeria? Uh, I was actually, first of all, I was born in Lagos, the big city of Lagos, one of the largest city in Nigeria, heavily populated, a lot of people. So I was born there. I was born actually in a church. Yeah, I was born in a church, and also I was born into a Christian family. After 2 years after my birth, my parents had to move from Lagos to another place called Delta State. I believe it's also popular for those who did history and geography. Delta State must be also popular. We moved to a very, should I say, remote area? It's kind of a remote area. It's a place called Agbo. Uh, not so fancy. I don't think there's anything fancy about Agbo in those days. So growing up, I had my mom, my dad, and my two elder sisters, uh, who are both married now. So I'm the third child out of four children. I have three sisters. I'm just the only boy. So what was growing up in Delta State like? It was quite simple, because in Delta State things were not so difficult like other states. Things were quite cheap because they were good in agriculture. Also, we used to live in a very big plot where there were several houses, but we were the last tenants in that plot. Like, that compound was really big because it was owned by a doctor who had passed away some years back. He was actually a very popular doctor, and there was something like a clinic or something close to a hospital that used to be at the front of the plot where we lived. So growing up was wonderful because of my sisters and my mom, because I was really close to them, because there was this time my dad had to travel. He traveled for almost 4 years. He had gone to Korea, also to study. Then he was already a pastor lecturing in a Bible school then in Delta State. So when my dad had traveled, I was just left with my sisters. My mom was like the father and the mother at the same time. But I think the best part of growing up then was usually going to the village. was was usually going to the village, because then when you go to the village, we get to meet with our cousins, have a taste of the village food. But there was one thing I hated going to the village, was fetching water, because with my place, I'm from Imo State in Nigeria, the southeast part of Nigeria. So in my place, we have problems with water. So for you to drill a borehole, it takes a lot of money and a lot of time, because the water is so deep inside of the ground. So then we didn't have our own water system. So we used to go and fetch water. So that was one of the things I hated. So I used to prefer my mom's place over my dad's place, which is my village. Uh, so those were very nice memories. And after how many years? In 2007, we had to move again. But within Delta State, we moved to a place called Asaba. It's quite popular nowadays. It's quite popular nowadays. We moved into a better place. At least Asaba is a more developed city than Abo. Abo is more of a village. It's more of a countryside. It's more of a countryside than Asaba. And by the way, the school I went to in Abo, it was quite a funny school. The kindergarten I went to, because we usually have the system of education, you have to start from the kindergarten. It runs from kindergarten 1 to 3. So the school I went to was kind of a funny school, because it was just like less than 5 kilometers away. No, 5 kilometers is a lot. I think within 2 to 3 kilometers, you could get to the school. I think probably 2 kilometers. Probably 2 kilometers. You could get to school. So I used to be like the champion those days in school because I was the last born then. Because my younger sister, I'm 11 years older than her, so I was the last born for a long time. So those days in school, in kindergarten, I used to be carried on the back and brought to school. And when I come to school, my classmates would be like, I have a house name that I'm being called JJ at home. So they'd be chanting my name, JJ, JJ, because I was like one of the most brilliant kids in school then and also popular. So kindergarten there was quite nice, but the discipline there in school, you could be beaten very severely. You know, there were times you could fail subject or do something naughty. Our school didn't have a ceiling board on the roof part of it, so you could be hung in one of the wooden bars there and beaten very well by the teacher. So those were part of the things I didn't like in kindergarten. So when I got into primary school, I went to a school called Total Child. Total Child was owned by a mission department. It's like an evangelism body that owned that school. But even though it was for an evangelism body, that school it didn't seem like an evangelism body because there were a lot of crazy things happening in that school. And even there was this time, the school had purchased a land. There was this branch that they had opened up. And that branch where they had opened, it was a cemetery. So imagine you having your school up. The other part of the cemetery is this way, and your school is still on one side of the cemetery. So there were times, I don't know whether it was my own imagination, I used to hear footsteps when I was alone in the class, because there was this time I had an accident. We were going to school one certain morning on a motorbike, so we were moving through the highway, and the motorbike guy just collided with the door of another car. And the next thing I saw myself was on the floor. I tried to get up, I was just bleeding from my leg. Immediately I was taken to the hospital. So it took me over 3 months, almost 3 months, to get back to fitness and fully heal. Even when I was at home, I was even learning how to walk again, because my mindset had gone to like, this leg was completely damaged and all that. So then when I get to school, we have a system whereby, just like I think some schools still have it here in Kenya, they usually have assemblies before the school period of learning starts. So during those assembly time, because of my injury, I didn't used to go for assembly, so I just remained alone in the class. And then I used to feel like there was a spirit or something there. And we used to be told some very funny stories that, Nigeria is full of so many funny things, like witchcraft and the rest of them. We used to be told funny stories like this, that when the school closes and maybe it's dark, people usually pay the security guard who's in charge of that cemetery. They'll go inside there, dig out some bones and maybe there was a fresh dead body there. They'll dig out, get some parts of the dead corpse, and I used to hear things like that, and it was so creepy. So that was about my schooling in Agbo. So when I go to Asaba, I joined another school. Then I was in standard 6, because we have a 664. That's our system of education. So when I go to Asaba, I entered standard 5 rather, not standard 6. So we usually have an exam that you write from standard 6. So I wrote mine from standard 5, because everybody was writing, so I was not going to be left alone. So the 2 classes were merged, standard 6 and 5. So as we were merged, I wrote exams with them too. Then I moved to secondary school. Our secondary school is divided into 2. We have senior and junior secondary, and they both run for 3 years. So in secondary school was where my academic problem started. I started losing concentration, because I used to be a bright kid, but I never loved reading. That was one part about me. I never loved reading, but I was a bright kid in school. But then in secondary school, started having an eye on this girl, that girl. I got a girlfriend, things like that and like that and like that. So how was life in Asaba basically? life in Asaba was quite different from in Abo, because life in Asaba was a little bit more expensive. Because you know, rural areas and urban areas are not, they are not comparable, because the high cost of living is obvious. So the cost of living in Asaba was more than Abo. So then my dad had already come back from Korea, so we're trying to establish a church. By the way, my dad and mom, they're both pastors. So we're trying to we're trying to establish a church, but there were so many hardships. Actually, even as years went by in Asaba, our financial state kept on going down. There were times whereby my dad had to pay fees for us. Those days we used to be one of the first to pay fees. Once they give a notice to parents, pay your children's fees, my dad pays immediately. Before you know, there were times whereby he had to give permission, ask for permission. Just give me 1 week, 2 weeks, I'll pay. There were times it became 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1 month, and all of that. So things were quite difficult in Asaba. Things were quite difficult. Yes, there were good times, but there were more of, I think, more of bad times for me, because growing up, now I was becoming an adolescent, and even my early teenage age, I started becoming, actually from childhood I've always been stubborn. I was like one of the most stubborn children. Apart from my immediate elder sister, I think the two of us are the hard head people in the family. Very, very stubborn. I used to be very rude, insultive. Actually, I was a very naughty kid. I was a very naughty kid growing up. So then I always had problems with my mom, problems with my sisters, problems with my dad, because I felt like everybody in the family, everybody in the house was against me. I was on my own. So there were times I would throw my tantrums. There were so many things, but growing up then was quite crazy. And also, growing up, I was a very religious guy. Yes, I never missed church, going to church, but I went to church in a religious way. I was never saved growing up. So I got saved when I finished high school in 2014, 7th of July. I got saved then.
So guys, sorry to cut you short. I think this is going to be our next video, because now this is where we get to see how his journey started as a pastor. So see you. Bye.